Rain streaked the city bus windows like the sky was trying to wipe the night away, but inside, nobody looked up. Maya sat near the back, hugging a duct-taped backpack to her chest, her knuckles white. She was 17, overweight, hair a tangled halo around her pale face, eyes raw from crying. At her feet, a plastic grocery bag with 2 dented cans rolled with each turn. That was all she had after counting coins at the self-checkout, until the cashier sighed and walked away. Tomorrow she was being sent to live with some farmer 3 hours outside the city. Not foster parents. Not family. A farmer. The social worker's voice still rang in her head. He agreed to take you in. It's better than the shelter. Better? She'd seen the guy's picture. A man with calloused hands and muddy boots, standing by a rusty tractor. It felt like exile. Like punishment for existing. And she had no idea why. 2 rows ahead, a mother with a toddler wrapped in a rain-spotted blanket struggled, with bus tickets that kept falling from her shaking hands. The kid's sneakers were split open at the toes, socks mismatched. Maya's eyes stuck to them. She knew that kind of cold, the kind that gnawed at your bones. The mother's lips trembled when she whispered to the driver that she didn't have enough fare. For a second, nobody moved. Then a woman, in a black leather jacket, heels clicking on the wet floor, pulled a $10 bill from her coat pocket without a word. Her lipstick was deep red, hair sleek like a movie star stepping off a train in Paris. She didn't even look back after handing the money over. Just sat down, crossed her legs, and scrolled her phone. That moment burned into Maya's chest. The mother mumbled thanks no one heard. The stranger's perfume lingered in the air, mixing with wet wool and engine grease. When the bus lurched forward again, Maya pressed her forehead to the cold glass. She imagined the farmer's house. Probably smelled like manure. Probably no Wi-Fi. Maybe he was one of those men who barely spoke. People in town would stare at her, whisper. Big city girl dumped in the middle of nowhere. And she was big. Her classmates hadn't let her forget it. The word cow still clung to her like smoke by the time the bus reached the last stop. The mother and toddler were asleep on each other's shoulders. And the woman in the leather jacket was gone, leaving only the faint trace of perfume. Maya stepped into the rain. Her thrift shop hoodie soaked instantly, sneakers squishing as she crossed the cracked pavement toward the shelter for her last night in the city. Inside, the fluorescent light flickered. A man at the desk handed her a thin blanket and pointed to a row of metal bunks. The radiator hissed but gave no warmth. In the corner, a vending machine buzzed, half the buttons taped over. She crawled onto the bunk, hugged her backpack, and tried not to cry loud enough for anyone to hear. Morning came gray and raw. She brushed her hair in the cracked mirror above the sink, wincing at the knots. Her hoodie smelled like mildew, and her jeans were stiff from yesterday's rain. In the lobby, the social worker waited with a paper cup of weak coffee and a smile too cheerful for the hour. "Ready, kiddo?" Maya nodded, though her stomach cramped with dread. The drive felt endless. The city gave way to suburbs, then bare fields and skeletal trees. She watched the gas stations thin out, the houses grow farther apart. Until finally the car turned down a dirt road lined with broken fences. "There," the social worker said, pointing at a weather-beaten farmhouse. A man stood on the porch, tall shoulders broad under a faded jacket. He looked older than in the picture, with lines carved deep around his mouth. His boots were muddy, his hat pulled low. Maya climbed out, clutching her bag. Their eyes met briefly, his unreadable, hers defiant. "Thanks for bringing her," he said in a low voice. The car drove off, leaving only the wind and the creak of the porch boards. Inside, the house smelled of wood smoke and coffee. Simple furniture. A fridge humming in the corner, its handle held by duct tape. But through the window, past the barn, fields stretched farther than she could see. Endless. The man poured himself coffee, then finally spoke. "Name's Luke." "Maya," she muttered. He nodded. eyes distant, like he was weighing something unspoken. She didn't know yet that this man people called the poor farmer secretly owned half the land in 3 counties and carried scars money couldn't heal. And that tonight the storm would change everything. The wind picked up after sunset, rattling the old shutters until they clapped like warning hands. Maya sat stiff at the small kitchen table, watching Luke move about with the quiet efficiency of someone used to living alone. He placed 2 chipped plates on the counter, ladled thick stew into them. The smell was rich meat, potatoes, onions, and it wrapped around her like a memory of a life she never had. "Eat," he said simply. Sliding a bowl in front of her. She hesitated, fingers tight around the spoon. The only sounds were the hiss of the lantern and the storm chewing at the roof. Then she tasted it, and warmth bloomed in her stomach like a secret. Luke sat opposite, spoon in one hand, calloused knuckles resting on the table. He didn't look at her much, just stared out the window into the blackness beyond the glass. There was something unreadable about him, something heavy in his posture, like a man carrying an invisible weight. Halfway through the meal, the power went out. Everything snapped to darkness except the wind outside and the faint flicker of the lantern. Maya froze. "Don't worry," Luke said, voice calm. "Lines go down every storm. Got a generator in the barn." He pulled on his coat, grabbed a flashlight. Rain slashed sideways as he crossed the yard. Maya watched from the window, heart thudding when she saw him slip in the mud, catch himself, then keep going like it was nothing. He returned dripping but dry-eyed, generator rumbling to life behind him. Lights blinked back on. She noticed, then really noticed, the house walls lined with old photographs, some in black and white. A woman in a summer dress holding a baby. A younger Luke beside a tractor, smile easy back then. "Your family?" she asked softly. His jaw tightened. Something in his tone stopped her questions. Days passed, rain giving way to brittle sunlight. Maya learned the fridge wasn't empty after all. Luke stocked it from town every week, but ate simply, never wasting anything. He rose at dawn, worked the fields, checked fences. And slowly, she noticed things. The truck he drove looked beat up but hummed like new. The men who came to shake his hand wore pressed jackets, handed him envelopes, called him sir. Once, she overheard a banker on the porch say, "The North Acreage too?" "That's another 1,000 easy." Luke just nodded, as if thousands of acres were nothing. Yet he lived like this old house. Muddy boots, coffee in a tin pot. One evening, while sorting canned goods in the pantry, Maya blurted, "Why do people think you're poor?" Luke looked at her for a long time. Then he set down the box he was carrying. "Because I let them." He told her about the accident years ago, his wife and son, the car skidding off an icy bridge. How the money stopped meaning anything after that. How he sold off fancy cars, shut the big house, moved back here where no one asked questions. People assumed. He didn't correct them. Maya's throat ached hearing it. The man everyone thought had nothing was drowning in too much grief. Not too little money. Then came the night the shelter woman called. Maya was at the table doing homework under the yellow lamp. The woman's voice crackled through the receiver, saying the city foster board had found her a new placement suburbs. Regular family, neat little house. Maya's chest twisted. She looked at Luke. He was standing by the window, face hidden in shadow. "You can go," he said finally, voice steady. "You'll have what you need there." But her mind flickered with images, the empty fridge at the shelter, the mother counting bus tickets, the rain seeping through her old hoodie. And here, stew simmering on the stove, someone asking if she'd eaten. The quiet safety she hadn't felt in years. "I don't want to go," she whispered. Luke turned then, eyes meeting hers. There was surprise there. And something else, hope, small but bright, like the first light cracking through storm clouds. The foster board called again. Luke made arrangements. Not for her to leave, for him to keep her. Months later, the fields were green again. Maya stood beside Luke at the edge of the porch, both watching the sun sink over the thousands of acres people still believed belonged to some nameless corporation. She wore new sneakers now, a warm coat he bought after driving her 2 hours to a real store. College brochures sat on the table inside. "Funny," she said softly, "how people see what they want." Luke smiled, a rare, real smile. "Let 'em. We know better." And in that golden light, it was clear. One quiet act of generosity had rerouted 2 broken lives. Because sometimes the richest hearts live behind the humblest doors, just waiting for someone to knock.